Can you see the panel now?
Yes, perfect.
I only see 5 people. I don't see Lara. There I see.
You know where her priorities are.
We can start now.
Okay. On that note, once again, thank you very much. This is to wish a good evening, good afternoon, and good morning to all of you who are viewing this and are joining us for this event from Singapore, India, parts of Asia, UK, Europe, and in the US. This is a webinar on reconciling success and being socially conscious. This is being hosted by the Consulate General of India, and we also have the Consul General, Mr. Randhir Jaiswal, as our chief guest. Artha in Sanskrit could have few connotations, a couple of them being purpose and wealth. And at Artha Forum, it's our humble effort to try and promote a concept of conscious capitalism or social entrepreneurship with a modicum of spirituality. And it's to that end that we've done this webinar. We're truly blessed. We have the most eclectic and a very, very deep and eminent panel. As I mentioned, we have the Consul General, Mr. Randhir Jaiswal. We have His Holiness Bhakti Rasamrita Swami. We have Ms. Lara Dutta Bhupathi. We have Dr. Mukesh Aghi and Ms. Queene Singh Sethi amongst us. The moderator is Mr. Shayamal Vallabhjee. We've been always telling that he has the most eclectic background. He is from India and South Africa, and he is a sports scientist, a performance psychologist. He's had the privilege of actually touring the ATP with Mr. Bhupathi for a few years, and he's a talk show host. So he will be moderating it. So without further ado, would you all join me to welcome the Consul General, Mr. Randhir Jaiswal, to inaugurate this event and to give his insights. And then Shayamal, you can take this forward. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Thank you, Mr. Ganguly. Warm greetings to all of you from the Indian Consulate. I arrived in New York just a week back, so I must take this opportunity to wish all my friends and well-wishers here and the Indian American community. We are delighted to host this discussion, very relevant today, discussion on reconciling success and being socially conscious, along with Artha Foundation. The COVID pandemic has hit the world hard. We all realize how important it is for us to be together. And during such times, it's all the more important that we talk of reconciling success with the greater society that we live in. To my understanding, and we'll hear this more from our panelists, success, or the real success, in true sense of the word and its meaning, always is anchored and rooted in social consciousness. This is what we have learned from our great leaders, from our scriptures, from human values, from universal human values. Many of our viewers here and our distinguished panelists would know that march of civilization and human progress, from the days when we human beings and Homo sapiens, we got together as hunters and gatherers, to this age of 21st century digitally connected world, it has been a march, a travel of a community and a people from I to we, from I individual to we together. And for that reason, it is so very important that when we talk of success, achievement, and excellence, we must also make it relevant to people around us, to the environment around us. The central idea of humanity, it is wrapped in various layers of timeless values of compassion, of kindness, of giving back to the society, has been present in all cultures. In the case of India, historically speaking, culturally speaking, it is rooted in concepts like dhan, concepts of seva or selfless sacrifice, selfless service that forms the core of the values of Sikhism. Even the concept of renunciation. People like the great Mauryan emperor Chandragupta Maurya, one day he decided to quit his kingdom and travel to Karnataka for a larger calling. That was a choice that he made. But the other idea which comes out of renunciation is that you leave behind all that you have earned for others to enjoy, for others to share and make their life happier and successful. These are times when we have many challenges at hand, and it's important that for a sustainable world, we must also have a sustainable, successful pattern of living. And for that reason, it is very important that we talk about how we place ourselves, how do we place our achievement in the larger social context. Our moderator today, Shayamal, he comes from South Africa, where I spent some time. There's a beautiful saying on the African continent: if you want to travel fast, you walk alone, but if you want to travel far, you walk together. So therefore, let us come together to walk together in line with the age-old Indian maxim, Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, the world is one family. I'm very delighted that we have distinguished panelists here who will be talking about this so very relevant topic. And I once again welcome them individually. We have His Holiness Bhakti Rasamrita Swamiji, a very warm welcome to you and a namaste to you. Dr. Mukesh Aghi, a great supporter of India-US friendship and a great supporter of this consulate. Dr. Aghi, a very warm welcome to you as well. Madam Lara Dutta Bhupathi, whom we all know very well, very warm welcome to you. And Madam Queene Singh Sethi, namaste and a very warm welcome to you as well. And Shayamal, of course, a warm welcome to you as well. And I look forward to the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Consul General, Mr. Jaiswal. Thank you so much for hosting us, for a beautiful introduction. To the panelists, welcome. I'll do a personal introduction very shortly. But to everyone out there watching today's live, I welcome you in whichever part of the world that you are. The topic of reconciling success with social consciousness has two really important words or phrases in it: success and social consciousness. And from experience, we know that these words can mean vastly different things for different individuals. And it all entirely depends on the perspective with which you look at it. We've reached a really difficult stage in humanity because there are places in the world where there's global political unrest, there's unimaginable environmental pollution, there's gross unemployment, discrimination, and so much more. The world today needs hope and heroes more than ever. And this means that there's no better time to find a cause that you believe in and really let that cause mold you into the person you were meant to be. Today, we have a truly diverse panel who will share their thoughts, their perspectives, and perhaps even their process of self-transcendence with you. On the panel today, we have His Honorable Consul General, Mr. Jaiswal, Bhakti, Rasamrita Maharaj, His Holiness, Madam Lara Dutta Bhupathi, Dr. Mukesh Aghi, and Mrs. Queene Singh Sethi. But before we move into the panel where I'll introduce each person individually, I just want you to draw your awareness to what is your definition of success and what is your definition of social consciousness. And perhaps over the next 1 hour, through the thoughts and perspectives that are shared, maybe your perspectives will shift. The first guest who I would like to introduce to you is Dr. Mukesh Aghi. Dr. Mukesh Aghi is currently the CEO of the US-India Strategic Partnership Forum, the former CEO of L&T Infotech. He holds a doctorate in international affairs and has been a recipient of the JRD Leadership Award. But amongst everything, the one thing that I really share in common with him is that he's also an avid marathon runner and mountaineer. And Dr. Aghi, welcome to the panel. Dr. Aghi, my first question that I'd like to really pose to you is, you've been a CEO of many major organizations. And as a leader, you have the pressure of performance. You also have the pressure of profit. How does a leader really shift his mindset from being insecure about giving to really giving with confidence? You can share with us also your definition of success and social consciousness. Dr. Aghi, welcome.
Well, thank you, Shayamal. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody from Washington, D.C. The definition, as the Consul General mentioned in his opening remarks, you walk alone or you walk with the group and you go far. Corporations, you walk with the group to walk far away. And it's more important to understand that you define a purpose also for corporation. For the first time in last 160 years, Roundtable, which is a group of largest companies in America, changed the definition of success from shareholder value to basically community value itself. So what we are seeing is a shift happening among corporates, realizing that you just cannot drive corporates purely on profit and earnings itself. You have to contribute, you have to basically support your community to be successful. Coming back to your question about what makes a difference, I think it's important to understand we all need to have certain purpose in life to bring that difference in your livelihood. And the reason I say livelihood is you have to get up with a purpose every morning to make that difference. Now, you cannot go boil the ocean, but you can at least bring that change to your environment to make it a little better. And let me give you an example as to what we're doing at US-India Strategic Partnership Forum. We looked at India-US relationship and realized that you need an independent institution which drives the relationship between the two countries from a geopolitical perspective, economic perspective, technology, investment, people-to-people relationship. And focus on see how you can basically stabilize and grow this relationship. I would say in the last 4 years, we've been able to bring roughly $60 billion investment into India from the US. We've been able to create 3.2 million high-paying jobs in India. And at the same time, we are able to bring a lot of investment from India into the US. We are trying to make a difference. That is our purpose. And that's how we value success, is if we can go create better jobs, better relation with two countries, to us, that's our success itself.
Thank you very much, Dr. Aghi. I think the one common phrase that we're going to hear over the next 45 minutes to an hour is the shift from I to we. And one of my friends who's a psychologist and professor at Stanford University says it beautifully when he says, excellence is not one person moving 1,000 steps forward, it's 1,000 people moving one step forward. Okay. The next panelist that I'd love to introduce you to is a dear friend, Mrs. Lara Dutta Bhupathi, who's an actress and entrepreneur. She's a former winner of Miss Universe, Miss Femina India, Miss Intercontinental titles, someone who is in Bollywood from 2003. She's been a UNFPA Goodwill Ambassador since 2001, and now has taken the deep dive into entrepreneurship with her very own skincare line. Lara, welcome to the panel. Okay. Lara, I know very well that your family have spent a large amount of time in the armed forces. So service, or the idea of service, is really part and parcel of both your Indian roots and your value system. But you personally have veered into an industry of entertainment and beauty, which is really deemed to be very, very superficial. Firstly, how would you define success, social consciousness? And how is that background of having people from the armed services contributed to this definition? And how have you evolved using that background from when you debuted to now in your journey of entrepreneurship?
Thank you, Vajan. Thank you so much for having me on today. I'm really excited to actually be here on this platform with so many amazing, very different, very varied personalities. All of us are at different stages in our lives. All of us come from different backgrounds. So it's a really interesting conversation for me, really to see how each person individually, describes what success means to them. So I genuinely, honestly believe that, that definition constantly evolves through life. If you asked me the same question 20 years ago when I was 21 years old and winning Miss Universe, I possibly would have had very different answers. Today, I think for me, very, very simply, I'm in my 40s. I've sort of straddled many different roles in my life, and I've been one of the lucky few, to have that opportunity. I think honestly for me today, if at the end of the day, I can lay my head down on my pillow with an absolutely clear conscience, knowing that I've given 100% to everything that's come my way through the day, fall asleep feeling loved and protected, which means for me translates into meaning that I have good, loving relationships in my life. I have the financial stability to have the luxury to say no to things that I don't want to do. And I think just have my health both physically and mentally, in a stable, in a sound place. I think for me today, that would really encapsulate what I see as me being successful. And you're right, I come from a family background that is very deeply steeped in military service. 3 generations of it, my grandfather, my father, my own sister, and all generations have seen multiple wars. Fortunately have fought multiple wars for the country as well. So we, yes, grew up with I guess it's in our DNA that, Vatan se badhkar aur kuch nahi. And so this, just being of service has been something that has been a very natural sort of progression for us in life. And I think for me, winning something like Miss Universe quite early in life sort of put me in a position or gave me the opportunity to really kind of work at things at a very grassroots level. So I saw things quite early on in life that gave me a pretty real perspective of what life really is about. So even though I come from an industry and I've spent 26 years in an industry that's essentially beauty driven, which a lot of people feel is quite superficial, it's given me the opportunity really to experience life on a scale that I think very few people really have a chance to do so. And therefore that kind of grounding gives you the best perspective to really be real in life and not get carried away with all the glitz and glamour that comes with this business.
Thank you very much, Lara. Thank you so much for that. Ladies and gentlemen, the next guest or panelist that I'd like to introduce you to is His Holiness Bhakti Rasamrita Swami, who is a former multinational banker and holds an MBA from Bombay University. His Holiness Bhakti Rasamrita Swami has been a monk for more than 30 years and has served as the temple president in Mumbai, Belgaum, and the Vrindavan ISKCON temple. He was renunciated into the sannyasi order in 2010 by a friend of Artha Forum, his Guruji, His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj. Maharaj, welcome to the panel. The first question that we'd like to ask you is, from being a banker to being a renounced sannyasi, how has your definition of success really evolved? And the second part of that question is, I'm very interested in knowing, as the Consul General said, Seva is such a part of our Indian DNA. But is Seva and spirituality two sides of the same coin? Can we cultivate a spiritually conscious individual who wants to remain independent of religion or spirituality? Over to you, Maharaj.
Thank you, Shayamal. First of all, greetings to not just the panelists here and our chief guest, but also to all those who are viewing this program, and wish you all well. Hope you're healthy and safe in the midst of this pandemic. To answer your question about the transition from banking to spirituality and what's the difference, really the difference is that earlier I was dealing with material wealth and now I'm dealing with spiritual wealth. I was dealing with money and now I'm dealing with another kind of wealth that is far more precious, that is far more enduring, far more satisfying, far more uplifting, and something that gives happiness far more than money does. So success, well, we're going to hear a lot about it. Some of our other speakers are going to also speak more about it. Since you spoke about seva as an essential feature of being socially conscious, well, yes, indeed. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So essentially, seva is one of the very, very important words in our lexicon, in our culture. There is no question of being not just a religious person or a spiritual person, but even a human being, unless the spirit of seva has awakened within us. That is what our culture says. You see, humanity is not just a question of being, having certain morphological features, looking like a human being. It's not even about being materially affluent or accomplished, but it's a matter of consciousness. It is a matter of living a life of sacrifice. Evolved human life is not to be seen in terms of external sophistication, rather it is to be seen in terms of internal development. To the degree that we have developed a selfless spirit of service, as opposed to a selfish spirit of acquisition, to that degree we can say that we have really, truly become human. And while it is certainly possible to have a service spirit without religion and spirituality, But I think where spirituality, genuine religion helps is that it gives us a clearer conception of the highest welfare work possible. It gives us a very clear perspective of different types of welfare activities. We rise from individual welfare to the larger welfare, to the ultimate highest spiritual welfare. So I think where spirituality and religion, true religion, comes in the picture is it gives us clarity of vision. It gives us clarity of purpose. And it gives us the wherewithal, it gives us the equipment that is needed to accomplish this kind of seva for the true welfare of everybody.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. Ladies and gentlemen, our fourth panelist that I'd love to introduce you to is Mrs. Queenie Singh Sethi, who's a former Miss India winner, and she's now migrated to being an entrepreneur and is the founder of a jewelry brand called Jewels by Queenie. Her handcrafted pieces have been worn by celebrities across all industries, Hillary Clinton, the Queen of Morocco, Naomi Campbell, Paris Hilton, and the who's who of Bollywood and Hollywood. She's also a master's graduate in mathematics and a powerful advocate for the woman empowerment movement. Welcome, Mrs. Sethi. My question that I'd really like you to share with us is, what is your definition of success? And how has that definition evolved from being a former Miss India winner to now really being an iconic woman entrepreneur leader in this current day and age?
Thank you. And it's lovely and honorable to be on this panel with all of you. For me, success is a state of mind. And my mind tells me that it's a combination of the 3 C's, which is commerce, creativity, and cause. Through creativity, I earn and I contribute to a cause. But as I said, that it's a state of mind, and your mind is always evolving, and so is the definition of success. Today we have success can mean confidence, it can be positivity, in these unprecedented times. It can be about health and wellness and about treating your body as your temple. I mean, it's not just the state of mind that is evolving, it's the environment around us that evolves, and therefore your state of mind keeps evolving, and therefore the definition of success. So what I felt, like Lara said, was when I was a Miss India, and my goals of being successful and what I felt about success is so totally different from how I feel today, and I know even the next few months on how it's going to constantly change. It's the measure of even being able to give back and being able to care for others. It's a measure of your success, your awareness. Everything sort of, incorporates the definition of success today.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Singh. Dr. Aghi, I'd like to bring you back in the conversation because, when I was speaking to you earlier on, we had a beautiful analogy that you gave me in that conversation where you mentioned and you gave the example of China and India and the dynamics and how the past leaders of these countries and the ethics in which they govern their country has really molded the fabric of that society in how they think about conscious businesses and consciously giving back. And you referenced the examples of a Chairman Mao and a Gandhi, for example, in the way they governed. I'd like to bring you back to really explain and share with our audience how the ethics that which an organization is led really sets foundation for how we approach social businesses and consciousness.
Well, I think you have to look at nations. Characters are defined by the values you imbibe in children as they grow up. And the foundation of India, and you look at the foundation of China, these are 2 countries which are dominant in Asia Pacific. And we feel that the post-COVID era you will see a tectonic shift in the base and power base of both countries. And today, both countries are at odds on the border side. And to me, that defined the character. And let me just tell you something. That is, when you look at China as a nation, Mao in his Cultural Revolution starved 30 million people to manage an experiment. Whereas India's father of nation, Gandhi, starved himself to save millions of lives. So right there, it defines the values and the culture of two countries itself. If you look at the clash at the Ladakh border, you have soldiers from India who are brought up with certain code of conduct, who are brought up with certain values. And these values are not just coming from the British Raj itself, the value coming from Mahabharata. If you look at the epic, the soldiers, when they fought daytime, they got together in the evening to break a meal. And today, if you look at the Indian armed forces, still have those values. And what happened at the border was you have the Chinese coming more from a communist era, more like a machine, lacking those values, came in and slaughtered 20 plus Indian soldiers in a very brutal manner. To me, that defined the values itself. And I've always said that China will never treat India as an equal partner. So we need to agree, accept that, and build India from that economic and military development itself. So coming down, the question we all have to, we talk about nations' values. The challenge we see India has is how do we basically quickly in the next 20 years have a strong economic development, focus on quality of life of citizens itself. And that means we need to work harder partnering with countries like United States, which can bring in technology, we can bring in investment, we can provide coverage as China gets much more assertive, aggressive, dealing with India itself. So I strongly believe that for India to succeed in the next 20, 30 years, economically, militarily, from a value system perspective, it needs global partnership, and United States is one country that has to leverage for the 21st century.
Thanks, Dr. Aghi. That's quite enlightening. Maharaj, Dr. Aghi speaks a lot about value systems, and I'd like to bring you back into the conversation because I've been privileged enough to see how at many of the temples in the ISKCON movement, we have a Gurukul schooling system, which is really a traditional schooling system which teaches you the importance of imbibing a community, and it teaches you service. But we're seeing really that schooling is going to be transforming in every shape and form. We don't even know whether physical schools will be a thing in the future. Okay, how would a parent or how would society start cultivating these core values that are normally taught through these traditional medium schools so that we can start building more consciousness in our society from the root up?
Education is at the root of everything. And what has happened in our educational system is that we have become a little overwhelmed by a materialistic conception of life in general and education particularly. So what's happening is that our educational system in the modern day is more focused on people getting information, people getting degrees so that they are employable, which in any case they are not. Actually, that is the reality of the situation. But very rarely do we see education focusing on giving values and proper culture to the students. Somewhere down the line, in the pursuit of what we think is progress and advancement, we have let this culture, we have let the system of values, just slip through between our fingers. And we have tried to, in our race to imitate so many other civilizations, somewhere down the line lost the essential jewels of our own culture. So that is why we see an increased awakening amongst many people everywhere, not just in India, but all over the world. I see this, that people are going for homeschooling, they're going for traditional methods of education, which are a little isolated from the mass of students, because the kind of atmosphere that I see vicariously through parents who have children in schools and the kinds of things that are going on in the schools makes me aware that we have somewhere erred majorly. And the traditional Gurukul system in India focused a lot on cultivation of values. You know, the student lived in the house of the Guru. That's why it was called the Gurukul. And the Guru looked after the children, the students, like his own children. And they lived with the Guru for a good many years. And then they moved on to wherever their destiny took them. So I think there is a need to re-examine our whole educational setup, our values, our systems, so that we can bring forth into the world a whole new generation of young people who will be imbued with the correct mindsets, who will be devoid of an overly materialistic conception of life, and who will understand the true spiritual values, which are really non-sectarian. And then we will generate, or we will produce for the society very able, noble, spiritually conscious, citizens who will only do good for the world.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. Lara, I'm going to bring you back into the conversation because as someone who's constantly into the limelight, I'm very interested in whether you feel like you're constantly being judged. And when you're constantly being judged, does that really impact your consciousness in terms of the decisions you make about giving, and when and how whether you feel you're going to be trolled, for example, on social media? What is that balance like, and how do you find that balance when that inner voice is always trying to protect you from doing what is perhaps right because of the negative criticism that's going to come, or really listening to your heart or your consciousness and acting on that point? That's got to be a very delicate balance.
Sure, it is. I mean, I think, having been in the business for so long, for 26 years, when you come in, I came in as a teenager. At that time, there was no social media, so we had it a lot easier. Now when I train the girls who go to represent India at Miss Universe, one of the questions I'm always asked is, how difficult or how different is it for the girls now, considering that you have so much social media presence, and therefore, the girls are sort of mini celebrities already before they've ever achieved anything in life. But when you're that young, when you're starting off in life, you don't know what you're signing up for. It becomes apparently clear if you are able to achieve some level of success. And so for me, I think, I was quite aware pretty early about what the price was that needed to be paid for the life that I chose. But then that also comes with the fact that therefore you also have a sort of a social responsibility, especially as a woman in India. Having achieved something 20 years ago, of course, there have been some incredible women from this country who have been my inspiration, for me while I was growing up. So I can't really say that we are the sort of, the path breakers or the torch bearers. We're certainly not. There have been some incredible women from this country that have come way before us. But in the given circumstance, in the fields that we choose, there's a lot that can be done. And if you'll notice, there have been some really incredible conversations that have come up in these last, I would say, 2 or 3 years, especially where women are concerned. There have been powerful conversations on the Me Too movement, on inclusion, on pay disparity. So they've just been, and conversations that have been led by women. So I think it's fantastic to be, part of a movement, or at least to have a voice and to have the confidence to sort of, add to that when you should. So what I find on social media is also that there is a lot of unnecessary noise. Today, just because we're celebrities, none of our emotions or none of our feelings are given any credibility until and unless we've tweeted about it, or unless I've posted a picture about it. So if it's World Yoga Day, it obviously doesn't apply to me unless I've posted a social media picture of me in a yoga pose. So I find this quite frivolous and I don't buy into it. But I think that that also comes with a little bit of experience. When you're 42 years old, you're not a spring chicken anymore, so you have a wealth of experience behind you. You know who you are. If you're lucky enough, you're surrounded by the right people, so you're true to yourself. And therefore, you don't buy into this, as much. And I think that therefore, that kind of becomes more social responsibility for me to sort of impart that learning to a younger generation that's coming after me. To give them or to empower them with the fact and the idea that they can go ahead to build amazing lives for themselves, where they are social media influencers, that they are achievers in their own right, but they don't have to be dictated to by anonymous people and, hiding behind anonymous handles and having a say on your life. But I think, Veg, for me, honestly, when it comes down to social responsibility, I'm in my own way, in my own life, I don't believe in being, doing something, giving of myself, my time, my energy, or my finances, just because it's my corporate social responsibility, or because my religion tells me that it's right to give, sort of tithes and donations, or maybe because I feel that I'm morally responsible to do so. I think for me, the endeavor really is to give without looking at any end result, so without looking to see whether it makes me feel good about myself or that it's changing somebody else's life. I think the endeavor is really for it to become an integral part of just who you are, without looking for an end game in the giving. And I think that for me as a human being is part of my process of evolution, that it just becomes your natural state of being, where you do and you give without looking for some kind of, I don't know, gratification in it.
Thank you very much, Lara. Giving without expectation, giving without gratification, I think is a key point, the key lesson we need to take. And on that point, I want to bring back Mrs. Queenie Singh, because in our discussions, we spoke about a new business and the new way in which you are structuring businesses, where you're really making charity or a social cause a part and parcel of that business right at the core level in ownership, exactly like the Tata model, where you're dedicating a certain percentage of your business, come hell or high water, to a social cause. And that's really taking what social consciousness is and giving is right down to its roots. So what inspired this thinking, and how do you execute in this manner?
I would say that my biggest inspiration has been my father. He was an industrialist and a leading industrialist who was a beacon of light for me. He was, at his time, he was the president of the Indo-American Chamber of Commerce. He was the president of the CII, of PhD Chamber. He was a senior member of FICCI through his life. And more than anything else, it was his compassion towards others. He had the softest heart about thinking for others. And there was always a very strong CSR team, in the company. And I grew up with that. So today, everything that he stood for has become sort of Bible for me. And I take my inspiration from that. And, the whole, it's made me into a responsible member of a small business community and a responsible woman in society. So it's not just having a vision and a mission, but having a social mission and defining it, a well-defined social mission, and to read or to study the blueprints of corporate America and their how they have championed their CSR activities. And like you said, having Tata as a gold standard, and being able to sort of inculcate that ideology itself becomes, a thought and a progress towards social responsibility and growth, and being socially conscious.
Thank you very much. Consul General, Mr. Jaiswal, I'd like to bring you back into this conversation because you've traveled around the world. Okay, you've worked in many countries, and one was South Africa. And in South Africa, you saw the contribution of Indians in really building that entire ecosystem. Can you share with us your personal experience of the contributions that Indians are playing globally in really building socially conscious ecosystems around the world? Because we are really the backbone of many countries wherever we are. And I don't think that's shared and exposed as much as it should be.
Well, thank you, Shayamal. We have a large Indian diaspora today spread from Australia to Chile, from London to Johannesburg, and in number terms, I think this the size of Indian diaspora would be something in the range of 35 million or so. Now, in each of these countries where our people are living, they've done very well, and that makes us exceedingly proud of their achievement. It is through the anchoring of their Indian values, their hard work, that they have been able to carve a name for themselves wherever they are. Specifically speaking of Africa and South Africa, I can tell you that the first diaspora action from South Africa to India happened even before Mahatma Gandhi landed on the shores of Durban. It was somewhere in the 1890s, and you would possibly be aware of that. The people from Porbandar, they got together and they started a school. If my memory serves me correct, the school is called Centenary Memorial Victoria Memorial School in Porbandar, where Mahatma Gandhi was born. And the interesting part of that connection is that the school still runs and is being run by the community, by people in Durban and in Johannesburg and other cities in South Africa. So we have very good stories to tell of Indians doing well the world over, and the kind of strong connections they have established with their villages, with their cities and towns in India. I would like to take you back a little in history. When we had trade flourishing along the Silk Route in Central Asia, we had large number of Multanis, Marwadis, Khatris, and other Indian communities prospering in various cities of Central Asia. And they established solid, very strong, socially responsible businesses giving back to the society. And that, I must tell you, has served us very well in terms of the kind of convening strength we draw from that history into India today. Let's go a little away from the Indian diaspora. If some of our viewers would be familiar with the stories of Scottish planters in the Caribbean, because most of these plantations were where Indians traveled to work hard on those sugarcane plantations. The earliest diaspora action from the Scots side into UK, into the Scottish Highlands, was from the Caribbean plantations. They built the first infirmary, the nursery, the hospital, the school in towns like Inverness, so on and so forth. All in all, diaspora the world over has played an important role in connecting the mother country with the country of their residence and country where they are presently, which is their home. And that has gone into creating a living bridge of sort between peoples. And that feeds into strengthening global connections, bilateral connections between countries today. Talking about United States, we have a large American Indian community here in the United States. They are playing a vital role in supporting our development back home. We would encourage more of them to come forward and see what we are doing, how they can partner us by way of technology, investments, business propositions, joint ventures. we have a goal to double our farm income by 2022. And when we talk of, success and socially conscious, making them socially conscious, for example, if I were to enhance India-US trade, I would be adding value here in the United States and adding value home. But if I was a little more socially conscious, I would see that I'm actually adding value to the farmer's income in India, and that goes into feeding into a larger national objective of doubling farmers' income by 2022. So there's a whole lot of things. This consulate has huge responsibility in terms of offering consular services to people here. If we have a human face to a public service delivery, I think that will be combining a success with social consciousness. So all in all, we think, and I have very good stories to tell from my stay in Cuba, in South Africa, in Portugal, these 3 countries that I have stayed in, and I've traveled to many others. We are doing very well. We are proud of our achievements, proud of the Indian communities, what they have done in various parts of the continent, and we want to continue to strengthen, nourish, and nurture that relationship.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jaiswal. That's beautiful to hear. And I think the empathy is really the key part of really finding that social consciousness and getting to touch other human beings. I think we'll have time for probably one more question with each one of our panelists. So I'm going to bring back Mr. Aghi, and I'm probably going to put you on the spot now, because when we look at Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and he speaks of transcendence, he says, you know what, you've got to tick all of these boxes. And we've seen that model really work in the United States. It's a Western model. When we look in India, we've seen through millions of examples where people really don't even have their basic needs, but service is such a core part of who they are that they give. Yet, when we look at Bill Gates and how we try to convince billionaires around the world to give their wealth to social causes, he seemed to be most unsuccessful in his venture or his trips to India. Do you think there's something that's amiss in the psyche with respect to that confidence to really give this wealth that we've accumulated? Is there something that we're not seeing?
Well, somebody said that the greatest tragedy is not death, but life without purpose. And when we look at the Western model of giving and Indian model of giving, they both are very, very different. And I think while you have people like Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, taking their assets and allocating to a charitable organization, it is a fantastic model. But let's not discount the Indian model of giving also, because it's not, we may not have those billionaires who are not giving, but when you go down to the common level, you look at a beggar on the street. I've seen it whenever I visit India, they give. And so I think giving should not be measured by the dollar amount, but giving should be measured by the sincerity and effort of trying to share and make that difference and bring that change itself. So I think from a India perspective, yes, the billionaires may not have joined the Bill Gates, Warren Buffett effort itself, but when you go to individual levels, when you go to family level, what we are seeing is giving is part of the culture, part of the value system, and it's a little more, I would call it desperate rather than concentrated itself, but giving is still very, very strong in the Indian ethics and values.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Aghi. That's so true. We see this, actually we're seeing it more prevalent now than ever before during this COVID-19 time, where communities are coming together and really supporting each other, being the backbone of each other. Mrs. Queenie Singh, I'd like to bring you back. We constantly talk of being socially conscious, and we've known and seen through the examples given by everyone that social consciousness has many faces. As an entrepreneur, as a woman leader in society, what do you think are some of the things that small and medium enterprises can really do to become more conscious in their approach to building a business at whatever level you are?
Leadership is set by example. And I don't think the SMEs need to be restrained because of their size in their thought process. Like we look at elders for advice, for their learning, for their experiences. We should study the blueprints of corporate America to see how they've championed their CSR activities. And, if we are able to, and the Tata Group is a gold standard, if we are able to inculcate that ideology, that automatically spells growth. And then again, another phase is the consumer, which is all important and is the core of society. And if you're able to connect and service the consumer, that itself is a winner. And the social mission that I had spoken about earlier, I think is imperative. We have the vision and we have the business mission. And now it's, every company, I think, however big or small, has to have a social mission. And it, again, doesn't matter how big or small it is or what kind of line of work you're in. It is about realized consciousness. And if your work is honest and sincere, and it's that is which makes the work more meaningful, whatever work you're in.
Thank you very, very much. His Holiness Bhakti Rasamrita Maharaj, I'd like to ask you this next question is, I've often wondered whether do we need to experience pain or grief to truly have an awakening of our consciousness? And is pain necessary for that process? Or is there a better way, a pain-free way of really becoming more spiritually awakened to give or more socially conscious?
They say experience is the best, but also way. The best way to learn is to hear. And if one can learn without experiencing it, that's the best. For example, someone can hear that stealing is bad and it's painful because the results will be painful. But the thief says that I want to experience it. I want to try it out and then see the pain. So that's definitely not the best. So a person who learns by hearing is the best. The second is one who learns by experiencing. After having heard but not being convinced by hearing, wants to try it out, and then experiences it and then realizes something. And the third category is someone who hears, experiences, but still doesn't learn. So the best way is to hear about it. One doesn't necessarily need to experience the pain, although many times that would serve as an impetus. It would serve as a deterrent in whatever other things that we may have been doing which caused that pain. But primarily, I think it is hearing about it, it is learning about it, acquiring the knowledge in the midst of the right kind of people that will actually give us the right direction, the right vision, the right motivation, the spirit, the enthusiasm to move ahead. And this is especially so for spiritual knowledge.
Thank you very much. Maharaj, one quick question. What do you think is probably the most important value that a person should be working to cultivate?
I think it is humility, to be able to hear others who are better than us, or even if they're not better than us, to hear. Because generally, when it comes to success, it is natural for people in general to think that they have become successful because of their own ability or their intelligence or something like that. But there is this very evasive and mysterious element which we call luck or chance or destiny and so on. And in the language of the Bhagavad Gita, that's basically the sanction of God, So when there is humility, we open our minds, we open our hearts to understanding something that is beyond our intelligence and our abilities, you know, and that's when the doorways to something really fruitful in our life opens up.
Thank you very much, Maharaj. Uh, to Mrs. Lara Dutta, my question to you is, I know personally, and we've seen it even on social media, how spiritually inclined you are. Okay. What has been the role that spirituality has played in your life in anchoring you, in helping you achieve every single thing that you've achieved, in being a woman leader, in being an icon, an entertainer, a role model in society? What has been that role for you, and how has it strengthened you?
So, Shayamal, I grew up in a household where my mother is Catholic, my father is Hindu. So I grew up in a very secular household. And my father would come to church on Easter and on Christmas to listen to Mass. My mother would come with us to the temple. So I grew up with a concept of God. I never grew up with any fear, or I have fear of God, yes, the right kind of fear, but I never grew up knowing a God, a vengeful God. I always sort of grew up knowing an ever-loving God. And I think because of the way that I was raised, my outlook to life was never purely religious as much as it was spiritual. And when I joined the industry that I came into quite young, it was obviously very important to stay in shape. So there was an amalgamation of, aligning mind, body, and then very early on in life for me, it also became aligning spirit. And that's kind of been a way of life for a very long time. So I think for me, honestly, my spiritual practice really helps me in being able to establish a stability in life, whether the times are good or they're bad, to find a stable sense of being, or a position of being where you're not swayed so easily by your box office hit or your box office flop, or, any other great upheavals or great achievements that might come in life. So finding a sense of balance in life, I think that's where my spiritual practice has really helped me. I've been a yoga practitioner for more than 20 years. I have a very steady meditation practice. And I can't really stress how important that is in today's world, especially for young people, to inculcate a lifestyle like that into their lives. Today, everything that we're going through, it's meditation has been such a tremendous pranayam, all of it, such a tremendous source of strength. And I would really, really, tell people all over the world, and I do it with my own family as well, it's not that difficult. And you're never too late or too early to start a practice. So to start and to build it, and it just holds you in good stead for pretty much all your life. Everything else very easily falls into place after that.
Amazing. Thank you very, very much, Lara. To all the panelists, I think it's been an amazing, really fruitful discussion. We've hit 60 minutes on the dot. Sumitji, do we have any questions that we could take? I think we could probably take one question from the audience if there are any. Can you just help me with how we'll be able to see that?
No, I think questions, because of the social media, and it was largely YouTube and others, we've not been getting too many questions per se.
All right. So from my side, thank you very much to His Consulate General, Mr. Jaiswal. Thank you very much, His Holiness Bhakti Rasamrita Maharaj, Lara, Mrs. Queenie, and Dr. Aghi. Thank you very, very much. It was a thoroughly enlightening discussion for me, and it was beautiful to really see your perspectives on success and social consciousness. I'm truly grateful for this opportunity, and thank you very much, Sumitji.
Thank you, everyone, again. On behalf of the consulate, on behalf of Artha Forum, sincerely want to thank you. George Bernard Shaw often said this, that the single biggest problem of communication is the illusion that it happened. I don't think he would say that if he had heard all of you. Each and every point that you mentioned actually came across in all its sincerity and in all its effect. Ms. Dutt, when you talked about being almost an iconoclast, that you do not for you giving or to be a national state of without any state of gratification, or the discussion that you had in terms of seva that you talked about, and how what I really liked was this whole Vatan se badkar kuch nahi. I think those were some very, very insightful points. And as I say, even if one or two folks who perpetually look up to you and Bhakti Rasamrita Swami and Mr. Dr. Aghi and Ms. Singh were to kind of pivot a little bit on being a little more mindful and kind of decide that, as you had again explained, Maharaj, that success and money could be fungible. And of course, your sarcasm and humor has not lost. We got it when you talked about you're now dealing with a different kind of money, and money and currency is fungible. So it is clearly we can transform. Ms. Singh, thank you. I think it was, I'm a father and I'm a chopped liver for my son. So when I hear about you talking about your father with such interest and this thing, it's fantastic. And Council General and Shayamal, thank you. It was a scintillating conversation, and I thank you all for the opportunity to listen to all of you. I'd also like to add that the Council General's office, Ms. Mehrotra and some of the others at Artha Forum, especially the leadership of Rajiv Srivastava, Sanjeev, and others have played a key role in bringing all of us together. Thank you and have a lovely day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.